Owls in the Family, Chapter 5, Part 2. And since we were talking about wool learning to fly, last time I put up a picture of a great horned owl in flight, although in this picture he sort of looks like a jet plane or a stealth bomber or something. Looks kind of cool. Do animals have feelings? That was the question that I asked last time, and you came up with lots of ideas of different animals that, yes, have feelings. So you said rats, pigs, goats, bees. That's an interesting one. Baboons, sheep, cats, and of course we already knew dogs. Another interesting one was elephants. We always hear about how intelligent they are and how they take care of their families and so on, and their good memories. And they have feelings as well. I've been just reading a book recently, boys and girls, about this creature, parrots. And I'll tell you why I'm going to talk about parrots for just a sec. If you look over here on this side, scientists say that our basic feelings or emotions are these 6: anger, disgust, fear, sadness, happiness, and surprise. Those are our basic emotions. And those are the ones smaller children have. And as you grow older, you get more complex feelings. And animals will show these more basic feelings more so than complex feelings. But there are some animals that show complex feelings as well, and parrots are one of them. Parrots are highly, highly intelligent. And this feeling right here, jealousy, is a complex emotion. So you need to have a lot of intelligence to be able to feel this. Your brain has to be able to work, at a certain level. And I've been reading a book recently about these parrots that live in San Diego. They used to be pets, but they were released into the wild. And even though parrots come from tropical rainforests, they don't come from San Francisco. They live in San Francisco, and now they're wild. And the people that observe them talk about how jealous they get of each other. They get jealous of if the other parrot has more food than them. They get jealous if a parrot comes too close to their mate, and they're constantly getting into fights and arguments about it. So definitely some animals have more complex feelings than others. And of course, human beings have the most complex feelings of all. Last time I forgot to show you this picture, but in the first part of chapter 5, Billy was laughing at poor Wool and his crazy flying. And so he was on the ground laughing. And then he said Wool got so mad that he stomped off into his cage. So do owls have feelings? Well, I couldn't really find any for certain proof that owls have feelings, but they did say that birds, many different types of birds, have feelings. And owls are included in that category. And they said more of those basic emotions, but definitely one thing that you can see a lot of in birds is affection. So caring or love toward another bird, particularly their babies or a mate. And many birds mate for life. So they get a mate, and every year they will have lay eggs with that same partner. And then when that mate or partner dies, they can get very, very sad and even depressed. One way that you can see that they have affection for each other is birds will often do this with their mate. They will lean into them. So if you see a bird leaning into another bird, that's a sign of affection. They will also preen each other. To preen another bird, for a bird to do that, is to clean their feathers. So they have to clean their own feathers with their beak to keep all their feathers trim and in good condition. But if they preen the other, that shows a lot of affection for them. Okay, so there's just some random things about birds there. Just before school ended, Wool learned a new trick which bothered me a lot. He discovered that if he took a good swipe at it with his claws, he could tear a hole in the chicken wire of the cage. Once he learned to do this, it was impossible to keep him penned up when he didn't want to be. This worried me because there were a lot of tough alley cats and tough dogs too in Saskatoon. I was afraid if one of them ever got hold of Weeps or Wool when I wasn't around, then that would be the end. After a look at the owl's claws and beaks, Mother said she thought it would be the end of any cat or dog that tackled Wool or Weeps, but I was still worried. One night, Wool had a little argument with Mutt about a bone, and Wool got mad and wouldn't come down out of his tree to go to his cage at dusk. I called him, but he just ignored me, and finally I had to go off to bed and leave him out. I slept pretty lightly that night, with one ear cocked for trouble, because I knew the cats would be about. Sure enough, just at dawn, I heard a squawk and a scuffling noise outside. I hopped out of bed, grabbed my air gun, and whipped out of the house as fast as I could. Wool wasn't in the tree. In fact, there was no sign of him anywhere in the front yard. I raced around the corner to the back, expecting to find him dead and eaten, but instead, I found him asleep on the back porch steps. He had his feathers ruffled out the way birds do when they are asleep, and it wasn't until I got right up to him that I saw the cat. Wool was sitting on it, and only its head and tail stuck out beneath his feathers. But enough was showing so I could see that this cat wasn't going to bother anyone anymore. I pulled Wool off and he grumbled a little bit. I think he'd found that cats made good foot warmers. It was a big ginger tomcat that lived 2 doors down the street and belonged to a big man who didn't like kids. This cat had been the terror of the birds, other cats, and even of the dogs in our neighborhood for years. I got a shovel and buried it at the bottom of the garden. I suppose the cat had thought Wool was some new kind of chicken. Well, he found out differently. Dogs were no problem to my owls either. Though Mutt was no owl lover himself, he wouldn't let any strange dog chase them, not without a fight. Several times he saved Weeps from a mauling, but he didn't need to look after Wool. There was a German shepherd who lived near us, and one day this dog met Wool out walking and decided to see how horned owl tasted. I heard the ruckus and came running, but by the time I got to the street, Wool was sitting on the dog's back, digging his claws in for all he was worth, and ripping chunks out of the dog's ears with his beak. The shepherd headed down Spadina Avenue, yip, 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 yipping until you could have heard it in Timbuktu. Wool rode him for 3 blocks and might have ridden him right out of town if the dog hadn't dodged through a hole in a board fence and knocked Wool off. I had chased after them on my bike, but by the time I got to the fence, Wool had picked himself up, given himself a shake or two to settle his feathers, and was his usual friendly self. He gave me a cheerful hoo 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 and jumped up on the handlebars for a ride home. Word seemed to get around after that, and the neighborhood dogs took to crossing over to the other side of the road when they saw Wool coming. Now, we've talked about these books before several times. Who would win? So owl versus dog. Clearly, Wool came out okay. He won. Owl versus cat. Wool again won. So here's a little research question for you. What are some of the largest animals that a great horned owl can kill? So think about owls that are bigger than a cat, maybe as big as a dog, maybe even bigger than a dog, and you can research that question. Okay? Have fun with that, boys and girls.